so plain and precious. Finally, the Book of Mormon is the keystone of
Emmanuel.
Just as the arch crumbles if the keystone is removed, so does all the church fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. The enemies of the church understand this clearly.
This is not the Church of Emmanuel, Christ of Latter-day Saints, of Joseph Smith. This is the Church of Jesus Christ. When we remove the Lord's name, Emmanuel, from the name of his church, we inadvertently remove him as the central focus of our worship and our lives. In coming days, Savior returns with power and great glory.
I should also add for Jacob chapter 4, this is kind of important, and I've had personal dealings with this that was rejected by the church. I wanted to correct it. I did correct it. They rejected it in the footnotes for the revision in 2000 for 2009 Spanish speakers. Verse 15. And now I, Jacob, am led on by the Spirit unto prophesying, for I perceive by the workings of the Spirit which is in me, that by the stumbling of the Jews are Mormons, prophesying after Joseph's death, stumbling from the usurpation by Brigham Young, that Mormons will reject Joseph Smith, the stone, upon which they might build and have a safe foundation. But behold, according to the Scriptures, this stone shall become the great and the last, and the only sure foundation upon which the Mormons can build for Zion. And now, my beloved brethren, how is it possible that these, after having rejected Joseph Smith, can ever build upon it, that they may become the capstone? The capstone restores Joseph Smith's church and finishes the pyramid. The Egyptians. That's how it's supposed to be corrected in the book, in the Bible, in Psalm and Peter. I think it's 2 Peter, and one other place. I think, does it have it in the 15? They include Isaiah, and they don't even put them in here. They have the Psalm one for 16, assuming that's the correct one. God, Bruce, you really botched it. So, Travis Wingoodsell. So, spent the last hour uploading the wrong video. Have a Jasmine comment reply video, and I purposely intend to make long videos, especially first thing in the morning, so that I can have breakfast and bathe and shave and get going on my day afterward. But off to a great weekend. And so we are gonna go over the hateful comments of Mormons. And so before we get to them, we'll try again to break down the wall of Mormons. The Book of Mormon. I think we all agree that it's the keystone of our religion. I've had comments condemning me for referring to the keystone on the Salt Lake Temple as the keystone. No, duh. And that in the Book of Mormon, the keystone of our religion, which if you take it out, there is no church. It says it's in the learning of the Jews. That means the religion of the Jews. Thus, the Christ of the Jews. papers. This shouldn't be complicated. There shouldn't be any other justifications, exceptions, denials, gaslighting, outright lies. And so it means that the Book of Mormon is what it says it is, a book of prophecy and revelation. Prophecy refers to predictions of the future. Revelation is giving you the star dates of when these predictions will happen. And that's new for you, isn't it? Because you thought it was literal history. It means the prophets are lying to all of us. Their website, outright blatant attack against our founder, Joseph Smith, and against our keystone, the Book of Mormon. Not a single Mormon can defend the church as being Christian with Jesus. You have no argument. You have no case. You have no justification, no rational explanation as to how the hell this church is outright lying to us, maliciously lying. And so, thus, the keystone has been removed. This church should have fallen, because it's not Joseph's. But that's what fell, wasn't it? When Brigham Young took out the keystone. But that was by an enemy. Mormons are holding up the keystone of falsehood. It is you who must let it go. And so, section 115, forged document. That's not the name of Joseph's church. It wasn't Joseph who wrote that, or received revelation for it and a scribe wrote it. It's a forged document, because it's a lie. We've got the Joseph Smith papers now. This is how I'm finding out. Everything the church taught is a lie. The Joseph Smith papers have been correcting my mind, correcting the misinformation this church has been giving me. And notice the church will never make the changes that are necessary. 116, forged document. That was the Danite headquarters. Secret combination. There is no Adam-on-Diamond priesthood meeting. There will be no Adam-on-Diamond priesthood meeting. It's code from the Danites that they're going to overthrow the government. In the same pattern that they did in 1838. Notice the dates of when these were given. Section 117, forged document. But hey, wow. It has Joseph Smith calling out Noel K. Whitney, is it? For being a part of the Danites and Adamondiaman. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, Noel K. Whitney. The Danites forged a document to reveal they're the threat. And notice they did not decode several of the words in there. Are you familiar with the 1981 edition of our Doctrine and Covenants? Church claims they decoded everything. Yeah, no. There's a lot of stuff they missed. Section 119. Yep, forged document. It too, 1838. But this one was released by Brigham Young in 1844 after Joseph died. Snuck it in. Goes against the Book of Mormon. Priestcraft, seriously. You actually believe this section as overriding the Book of Mormon. See, when I was studying the Doctrine and Covenants as a kid, having already studied the Book of Mormon, I was realizing that the Doctrine and Covenants was further expanding upon what was talked about in the Book of Mormon. Section 119 is way up there. But if I would have gotten to it, which I have, I wouldn't understand it. 10% of my interest annually, I don't get interest. I don't have any interest. And so, yeah, Benson comes out and says, nope, it means wage. Every source of income, 10%. And so they don't even follow their own forged document. But priestcraft? So yeah, I was never happy about having to pay tithing as a child. That didn't seem right with me. That here I am, getting a few dollars, which is a lot for me back then, and I'm told I have to give 10% to the church, and I'm being told it's because of Malachi, which the tithing is supposed to go for the poor. That's the storehouse. We have bishop storehouses. Oh, okay, so I'm actually helping the poor. That's the only reason why I would have paid, that I'd paid tithing. Come to find out, yeah, it doesn't go for the poor. It goes for priestcraft. No longer goes for temples anymore either. There's a separate temple fund that they use for their criminal operation. And then Nelson comes out with the Book of the Law, saying that proves that Section 119 is legitimate. No, it just proves that it's the Danites. Because the Book of the Law is the ledger of the Danites, the secret economy to help fund the assassination of Joseph Smith, the Judas price, and to abandon the Mormons and flee with the Vanguard Company to the valley. That's why they were able to go. They had the money to pay for all the wagons to go. And the rest of the Mormons were too poor. Had to stay behind. Because otherwise, you take everybody with you. You don't leave anybody behind. But that's not Brigham. He didn't care about the Mormons. He had done the job, and now he was fleeing the country. With all his polygamous wives. Section 132. Forged document. Even Carly had caught on. She's another person who does videos now on YouTube, who left the church And she recognizes that Joseph Smith never taught polygamy, that he'd been lied about. And so, yeah, she recognized that Section 132 has the linguistic pattern of Brigham Young. I already knew that years ago. But good for her. She's doing it on her own. And so it'll take her decades to get to where I am 3 years ago. Too many people are too proud to accept that other people might already know this information and can help you increase your knowledge faster than you would on your own. But she thinks she figured this out on her own, and so therefore she thinks she's the only one who knows it, and therefore she thinks she has special knowledge, and so she won't listen to anybody else. And oops. That is very likely to cause a fall for her again, and then that could cause her to want to go back to church, which I don't understand. It's just, God. The other likely outcome is that she just gives up altogether. But yeah, learning that there was a previous edition of the Doctrine and Covenants that had a different replacement that was replaced by Brigham Young's Section 132. It was Section 101 in the 1835 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants. And it was on monogamy, condemning polygamy, which that one's in harmony with the Book of Mormon. Section 132 is not. It's a no-brainer. Section 132 is not in accordance with the Keystone. It has to be dismissed. Joseph Smith even tells us that that's what we're supposed to do. Section 43. O hearken, O ye elders of my church, and give ear to the words which I shall speak unto you. For behold, verily, verily, I say unto you, that you have received a commandment for a law unto my church. Through him, Joseph Smith, whom I have appointed unto you to receive commandments and revelations from my hand. And this ye may know assuredly, that there is none other appointed. Now, yes, it claims to be written by Joseph Smith, so that's confusing. Oh, no. Yeah, you do know what a forged document is, don't you? Mark Hoffman, ring any bells? And so he even says here, this is given to you so that you will not be deceived. And yet you got deceived. And so if you hadn't been paying attention, Nelson changed the law of chastity. Well, now it's in accordance with his law, not the United States. What's his law according to this church? Section 132. Nelson brought back polygamy. And none of you bothered to study or learn, so you missed it. And so Nelson thinks you're wicked because you're not obeying. And so there's others that the actions of the current presidency and former presidents have violated. In the news, we've had Karen become the new apostle with the death of Ballard. And then just the other day, a new 70 was called to be in the presidency. And all of that is not in our scriptures. Joseph Smith made it very clear how succession and replacements were to occur in this church, in Joseph's church. And this church will not follow it. They do their own thing. They do what Brigham Young changed. The keys of the president of the church. We're all led to believe it's the keys of Peter, James, and John. And you have no clue about section 107, verse 91. Yeah. Moses, that Jewish Christ guy. All right, the Book of Mormon's and the learning of the Jews. And so if you go to the Joseph Smith history of 1838, and you see that it says the name of the current church, well, I'm confused. Section 115, you're saying, is the wrong name of the church. It's a forged document. You didn't go to the Joseph Smith papers, did you? It reveals who the enemy is. Joseph Smith tells us in verse 1 that there's an enemy against the church. Evil, disposed, and designing persons who are militating against the church. The Joseph Smith papers reveals the actual name that Joseph used. The Church of the Latter-day Saints. So who put in Jesus Christ? One of the evil, disposed, and designing persons who are militating against the church. Willard Richards. One of Brigham's 12. After 1838. When was the 1838 visionary account given? You seen a pattern here? All of this is basic. So when you go to the Book of Mormon and they say, in the latter days there will be a great and abominable church formed, and they go into graphic detail about how to identify it. They go into great graphic detail on the techniques that they use to deceive and blind Mormons. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, guys. Joseph Smith calls it the Great and Abominable Church. In verse 19 of the first vision, the Book of Mormon goes into graphic detail on how not to be deceived when it comes. And yet. So, as we're approaching conference time, I'm having flashbacks of previous conferences. It is when I get the most views. Except lately, I've been getting a lot of views. Every single conference except for the October conference last year, YouTube has attacked me to shut me down and silence me, and thus trigger the algorithms to silence my channel, so that my channel's not recommended while I'm being silenced, denied uploading videos. And so as a result, I did get a lot of views for that conference. But here we are again. And so, yes, I am very well aware of a potential threat to me. will silence me. And I'm not gonna go rushing over to TWG to try to generate a whole ton of views before conference, do conference videos, because there's some things I also need to go over with you that the church knows about. The church is planning for this. The Exodus for the latter days was supposed to be in 2020, and you missed it. The enemy, obviously, is in power. And they tricked you. They deceived you. And we're looking at utter destruction now. Because that's what the scriptures warn us about. There will be no Zion. You missed the Exodus. And yeah, we can still do it. But there's not enough people. Zion is the people. You know, if I were rich enough to be able to afford all the materials and get all the machinery to do the work to build Zion, it would be empty. Zion is not the building. Zion is the people. And there are no Zion people. Thus no Zion. And so, like, there is prophecy precedent that we would go in tents, that the temple would be a tabernacle. I hope you know about that. See, Moses didn't have an exodus and then get to Jerusalem and the temple's already built. Yeah, that's not the story, is it? Because it's prophecy. Remember, if the Book of Mormon is the learning of the Jews, and the learning of the Jews is prophecy predictions of the latter days, and the revelation of the dates of when it's to occur, yeah, the whole Bible, not literal history either. But it requires Mormons to snap out of it, to tear down their walls and recognize and admit that the church is false and trying to hurt you. And so I'm upset with YouTube for tampering with my channel, as they've always done, but now they're not even doing my not signed in page correctly. It's all child stuff. Seriously? And last week or two, it was changed to all music stuff. Which, you know, it's fine, okay. But kids stuff? Dear God. That's just abuse. But Revelation 12. And so, this was written by a Jew who uses the author name John. Whether that's his actual name or not, doesn't matter. John is being used as a fictional character, as a Jewish character who's writing Revelation. What's Revelation again? Dates of the prophecies predicted. And so yes, it also contains prophecies, And it's all in harmony with all the other authors of all the other scriptures. You just need to know the basic pattern of prophecy. There's a protagonist, he's the Christ. There's an antagonist, he's the false prophet. And they have their churches, Church of the Devil, Church of the Lamb. And there's a contention for the souls of the members who are being held captive by the adversary. It's that simple. And there's obviously more to it, but John gives us star dates in chapter 12 for the starting of the latter days. It is precise, specific, whereas the other authors use story form, and then there's Isaiah who comes right out and says the prophecy of it. And so when you see in verse 1 a woman in heaven, this is not real. This is the constellation Virgo. And she has the sun with her. And so you need to know astronomy, don't you? That's a science. Because this is a date. We have our calendar based on science. And this particular calendar is a star calendar. Every single day is a new position of everything collectively. We never have a repeated pattern in the heavens from our view on Earth, because each planet in the solar system, plus the moon and the sun, all appear to go around the Earth as we view it from Earth. And we know from science of astronomy that that's not the case. The sun is at the center and everything revolves around the sun. But as we see it from Earth, that creates a uniqueness every single minute. Everything is always new. Everything is always different. And so here he is telling us of a future date because he knows this pattern of the universe, of our solar system, of what we see. We only see 5 of the visible planets. And then the moon has its different phases and so forth. And so he's giving us the month period of time during the year of when this is to occur. Do you understand that? Because the sun appears to go through each of the 12 zodiac constellations for the whole year. And then it starts it all over again the next year. And so this is the middle of September to the middle of October. That's when the sun is with Virgo. The moon under her feet, 29.4 days. And so a month period, at the most you can have it at her feet twice, but that would be rare. So that narrows it down of when the day of that particular month would be. And so we would know each year when that would be, but we don't know which year yet. And upon her head, that's the constellation Leo, it is designated with 9 stars. There are quadrillion gabillion to the umpteenth power. So don't play that game with me. The ancients designated only the brightest of the stars to designate the constellation. And I don't know how they came up with the shape, but that's how they did it. Leo is a little easier to figure out, but some others are like, what? 3 stars and that's a massive dragon? Yeah, and so it's saying there are 12 stars, not 9. Which means 3 visible planets out of the 5. So we got to figure out which 3 are they. And so Virgo is pregnant. Okay, that's not real. Well, maybe it's immaculate. But that's a visible planet. That's visible planet number 4. And there is only one visible planet that, as we see it from Earth, retrogrades, as it's called, in each constellation, as we see it go through the zodiac for a pregnancy period. Jupiter. Jupiter is the Christ of the Romans. He's the equivalent of Zeus of the Greeks. He's the equivalent of Amen of the Egyptians. Amen-El, God Amen. Emmanuel, the name Isaiah gives the Christ of the latter days. This is the Christ as the planet Jupiter. And so, if you notice, there's a JST Rev 12, 1-17. And the appendix, note the changed sequence of verses in JST. They make you look it up rather than just telling you to move verse 5 to verse 3. Yep. And she gives birth. That's at her womb, which is her left hand holding wheat stalks at the star Spica, and thus it's called the House of Bread star. Bethlehem, the Star of Bethlehem. Yeah, the story was giving you the date, revealing. Everybody's talking about the same thing in Scripture, guys. And so, the additional part is caught up unto God and to his throne. That was a tricky one for me until I saw the Joseph Smith translation, that it moved to that original sign. And then I went back to my Urim and Thummim and went, oh, it was there the whole time. Yep. They knew. See, the world, Christianity does not know this as a star date. They're told by the Catholic Church that this is just reminding us of the birth of Jesus during the Roman period time. The author of Revelation was after the Roman period time of the events, if they were to be literal history. He's talking about a future date. He's talking about future events. It's It's not about Jesus. It's definitely not, because it's not literal history. And the enemy knows this. That's why they're taking advantage of Christians. The letter to Giuseppe Mazzini by Albert Pike says this is what they're doing. They're going to deceive Christianity, build up Armageddon, and then know Jesus. Because these is all by the Jews. They're purposely using the Bible to perpetuate Christian interpretation by Christians, whereas they are using it with the star dates to coordinate the destruction of mankind with the day that shall burn as an oven. The overthrow of governments, collapse of governments, the extermination event of mankind, and thus prepare the world to accept Lucifer and his doctrine for the millennium. No Lucifer either, except for the baby name meaning of prophecy. God is the father of Jupiter. That would be Saturn, the fifth visible planet. So now we know 2 of the 5 visible planets, Jupiter and Saturn, and we know that Ophiuchus is the throne of God. So now we know the 3 other visible planets that are at the crown of Virgo and Leo: Mercury, Venus, Mars. There is only one date for this. It is the 23rd of September, 2017. We're not going to get to the comments, I guess. Again, I get caught up in the video that I miss it. The Book of Mormon. Remember, learning of the Jews, just like the Bible, tells you to refer to John with Nephi's vision. And so, sure enough, 1 Nephi chapter 1, verse 8, Lehi, being thus overcome with the Spirit, was carried away in a vision, even that he saw the heavens open. He's getting a date. Here's the revelation of the Book of Mormon, the start of the latter days. And it's also said to be the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah. Well, we don't have kings, do we? Or do we? There was somebody who became president, put on the throne by a foreign government, just like Babylon put on Zedekiah. And he knew. 600 years from this first year? Yeah, they knew of the Exodus, but they also knew of the foreign government that would put Zedekiah on the throne. Because it's about a solar eclipse over Russia. That the 600 years is the date given in Genesis for Abraham sacrificing Isaac. Remember that. And it's confirmed in the Book of Mormon as the sacrifice of Isaac. I probably should bring my recliner over and use that. This office chair is just not doing it for me. But I can't swivel on the recliner, and I'm further back so that I can get out, in and out. Too many complications. Well, he sees Revelation chapter 12. God sitting on his throne, Jupiter, 12 stars. It's 2017. So who took over leadership in 2017? Well, there was several elections around the world. How would we know which land? That's where the solar eclipses come in. Solar eclipses give us a date of when they are to occur. They give us a location on Earth that their shadow would be cast, their path, and they also, for the latter days, reveal the full name of the Christ, because Emmanuel is the sun god. The crossroads of the sun god and his wagon in the heavens. Yep. So we know that the location is the United States of America, because the 3 days of 3 hours, depending on the story, of darkness occurs over the United States of America. And knowing Paleo-Hebrew as I do, I caught it. In Genesis, there's the word signs, talking about the heavens. They're for signs. The Paleo-Hebrew word is the same word for signs in Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2. Thank you, Jasmine, who wanted to know about Christmas trees. And so I had to put some stuff up on academia.edu for you guys. Doing the videos, showing the pictures. I'm the only one who knows. China made t-shirts of Revelation chapter 12, that first sign. There are other signs there. Those are other dates. There's only one guy I found who had figured it out a year before I did. Because after I figured it out, I wanted to know if anybody else knew about it. And I found the one guy. And there were other people who were discussing it, but it was because of what they had learned from the one guy. And that one guy, nobody has figured out the others. And it's weird, because there's an end to the latter days to start the millennium. And apparently nobody else knows about it. And so I'm assuming then that that guy just got lucky, because the enemy already knows. They're already plotting. And so the church is doing the Book of Mormon this year because of the structured pattern. Every 4 years. And then Nelson made sure that all the others are in harmony with the Sunday school to be taught the same lessons, so that everybody's learning the Book of Mormon this year. But for April conference, there is no lesson, even though Nelson already cut it in half, so that families are required to do the study of the Book of Mormon on their own. Are you doing it? Or are you just watching the channel of those who do it for you? And so I was curious the other day to find out what lesson the church is skipping in the Book of Mormon. It's Jacob. That sparked tears. And so I did a quick review of Bruce R. McConkie's chapter headings for each chapter. It's 1 through 4 for the 1st to the 7th, and then the 8th through the 14th for 5 to 7. And so in chapter 1, we have Jacob and Joseph, the sons of Lehi, seek to persuade men to believe in Christ and keep his commandments. Nephi dies. Wickedness prevails among the Nephites. Nephi is the Christ, and he dies. And now Jacob takes over. Anybody familiar with Acts? No? In chapter 15, there is a priesthood council meeting that takes place. And several of the apostles voice their opinions. And then Peter. But then somebody ends the discussion. This person is the leader of the church, according to the author of the book of Acts. Not Peter, because he speaks last. He is not an apostle. He is the brother of Jesus, and his name is James. James in Hebrew is Jacob. Jacob means usurper. Jesus in the Gospels dies. So the author of Acts picks up where they left off. Jesus is dead. Who's replaced him? The usurper. Who's the leader of the church? Hilarious. And not a single Christian knows it, let alone Mormon. Joseph Smith dies, and his church is usurped by Brigham Young. Same pattern, because they're prophecies of Joseph Smith. And so here you have Nephi, who's the Christ. He dies. That's actually his new name in the temple, by the way. Prophecy. Because yes, this is the great and abominable church. The Christ of the latter days is to restore the original church. That's the pattern of the prophecy. All the prophecies and scriptures are about you, Mormons. You, out of all people in the world, you. Not Christians, not Islamists, not even the Jews, of whom the Jews were prophesying about some other people. You, Mormons. The prophecies have already happened. This is an established fact. And you still have been so blinded by the church you don't see it. You don't believe it. So you don't even bother to try to use the learning of the Jews to understand. It's all about you. And yet, Jacob here is a righteous man. But there's some fun stuff in here. And so the overarching thing here is that there's an antichrist that comes who seeks to overthrow the doctrine. He uses Christian doctrine to try to overthrow the Jewish doctrine of the Book of Mormon, of the prophets in the Book of Mormon. Chapter 2, Jacob condemns the people who are practicing polygamy. They had that many children who were old enough to... This is obviously not literal history. Because if it were literal history, Nephi would have died around 33 years of age, because that's the mortality rate. And they would have had to have had their children in large numbers to be about 14 years of age when Nephi dies. Which means that there were more females than males in order for them to be practicing polygamy so that Jacob could condemn them for practicing polygamy. And so obviously this is not literal history. But, did you remember about the law of chastity by Nelson? Section 132, the usurping church is bringing back polygamy. They're the Antichrist against the Jewish Christ of the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, using Christian falsehoods. Right here in the Book of Mormon. It's still the great and abominable church of the latter days that they're talking about. And so then, chapter 3, still continuing on the polygamy thing. Lamanites are more righteous because they have one wife. And then finally 4, all the prophets worship the Father in the name of Christ. What's the name of the Christ? Already gave you the answers. It's not Jesus, it's Emmanuel. And here the Book of Mormon is also exposing this church. They are antichrists, wrong name, and polygamy. And here we come to April conference, where they know the importance of this conference that they've been building, that they've been hinge pointing to, setting things up, getting things prepared. They're going to make this conference the start of the millennium with their kingdom. And they're struggling because the government is giving them grief. They're sort of getting stuff done, but it hasn't triggered the big event yet. And so on the 8th, the day after conference weekend, to the 14th. Chapter 5 is the allegory of the olive trees. And I point your attention to the final sentence. Eventually the vineyard shall be burned. The day that shall burn as an oven. Remember, you missed the Exodus. 20 years after 8 April 4 CE, which was 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. To 8 April 2024, the day after conference. April 4 CE over Russia with the solar eclipse is the sign from Abraham sacrificing Isaac. Abraham takes Isaac, his son, to Utah, top of the mountain. Prophecy, remember? And is going to offer Isaac as the sacrifice. The sacrificial lamb, as they're talking about. And then an angel appears, Malachi. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Here's a ram for the sacrifice. Aries is the ram-lamb constellation. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. A sacrifice is a solar eclipse in Aries with Mercury in conjunction. 8 April 4 CE over Russia on the west coast. It's not really a coast. The western borders. Remember that. Jacob chapter 6. To be taught the day after conference on 8 April 2024. The Lord shall recover Israel in the latter days. Then the world shall be burned with fire. He's explaining the allegory. Men must follow Christ to avoid the burning. Anybody bother to know the contents of the second vision of Joseph Smith from the 1838 history? Malachi appears, messenger, gives him a book, warning of destruction, and talks about the Christ of the Jews that Mormons must listen to avoid the day that shall burn as an oven. And guess what? Did you keep reading chapter 1, verse of 1 Nephi? Lehi gets from Emmanuel. Malachi is the sun at noonday. Emmanuel gives Lehi a book about the destruction of Jerusalem and gives the date of the beginning of the latter days. Should have kept it. Joseph Smith doesn't give the date, but he talks about the Urim and Thummim, which Abraham uses to look at the signs in the heavens with. And then Revelation. They're all talking about the same thing, Mormons. It's all about you, Mormons. You are going to be gathered at conference, Mormons. And then the day after is the date that everybody around the world is waiting for and have no clue when it will be, because they got fooled by a person who added into the book of Matthew, no man knows the day or the hour of his coming. It's all over the book of Matthew. It's the cross of Christ. They didn't use poles in the Roman period time. They were giving you the date. And then chapter 7. Oops. There's the part about, it's not in the chapter heading, Bruce. So I caught it when I was reading. So here in chapter 7, another Antichrist denies the Christ, contends with Jacob, demands a sign. It's a different kind of sign. And is smitten by God, the fall of the great and abominable church. All the prophets have spoken of Christ and that day to start the millennium. And so I'm going to have to figure out, and then the Brethren Ado, that's a Freemason thing because of the Jacobite, the Scottish Rites. There's a guy who gave his farewell mystic tie. That's where that all comes from. The author of this rewritten 116 pages, which therefore is not Joseph Jr., so he's in timeout for a whole year. Bruce Arm put the wrong date in chapter 10, or section 10. And there's talking about Moses in chapter 7. Yeah, this is not it. So let's try 4. Oh, it isn't 4. I stopped after reading the first part. The second part, Abraham's offering of Isaac was in similitude of God and his only begotten Son. It's a pattern for the latter days. That's why the author, Joseph Smith Sr., he was a Jewish Kabbalist and a Yorkite Freemason who saved America from the enemy who's plotting to do this and are doing it. On 9/11/1826 at his lodge as a Master Mason in Canandaigua, New York. It is he who is responsible for getting the Book of Mormon published. and setting up the church through his Son. Father, Son. He gave his son Joseph and Hiram, who were sacrificed for you, Mormons. He knew all of this in advance. And what thanks do you give them for their sacrifice? You have betrayed them. You have been Judas. You have been Judah, just phonetically the same as Utah. You will never know about this information because you'll be focused on conference, so you'll skip 1 to 4. And then boom, that's it. At least that's their plan. They do have backups in case something happens that doesn't go through. On 9/11 here in America, we were told that there were planes that did not accomplish their intended goal. The one in Pennsylvania, the crew fought back and downed the plane, preventing them from their intended target, which people speculated might have been the White House. And then there was another one, I think it was in Los Angeles. It's been too long now, but they were saying that he didn't go through with it. He didn't get on the plane. He chickened out. And as we have witnessed, 2020 was supposed to be it. The 2020 election was after Moses standing before Pharaoh in court. Within the 3 days of darkness time period, with the waters parting, the dry land for Mormons to cross through to head to Zion, there were pestilence and plagues with the drought, and there was creeping death. And so the 2020 election was designed to be the final blow for America. But the people, as we heard the tapes at the hearings, were saying that we're good enough, let's go home. They went there to murder congressmen to stop the certification of the election, to destroy and overthrow America. And they didn't follow through. And so here we come this year, the final year. Did you know that John also gave you the date of that? It's not just the signs in the heavens that I knew this from the stories of other prophets. Revelation chapter 19, the marriage supper of the Lamb. And so a whole bunch of hallelujahs, praise Yah. The marriage wedding supper feast of the Lamb at the Zion Temple. Joseph Smith knew about it. That's section 58. These are the comparable scriptures. And Amen is verse 12. His eyes, that's the sun, it's considered an eye or a flame of fire. On his head, many crowns. He had a name written that no man knew but he himself. That's Amen, the Egyptian sun god. That's his story. That's what John is referring to here. And then verse 11, here's the sign in the heavens. I saw the heaven opened, a white horse, that's Pegasus. And he that sat on him was Amen, the sun. Not Jupiter, that's the Lamb. The sun is on the back of the white horse in Pisces. And then in verse 17, we are told an angel stands in the sun. It's time. That's the end. This is the coming in the clouds of glory that everybody thinks is going to be literal. It's a sign in the heavens. It's a star date. It's 8 April 2024. Nobody knows about it but me and the enemy who are using this to coordinate their attacks. As I just went over with you, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints knows about it, and they're not telling you. I told you. Amos 3:7. I told you. Solar eclipse on the back of the white horse in Pisces on 8 April 2024. And I've been going over all these years, all the scriptures dealing with the prophecies, all the scriptures trying to get you to be good and understand the learning of the Jews, and you just won't do it. And you will be forced to be compelled to be humble. Conference is considered to be the gathering. You think you're the elite, you're the wheat, you're the lambs, but you are the lambs being led to the slaughter. You are the goats, you are the chaff, you are the tares, because they're the great and abominable church. They don't gather the wheat. The wheat want nothing to do with them. They're not the lambs. Lambs don't recognize his voice. There are only two churches, Mormons. The great and abominable church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ, and the church of the Lamb. This guy, the Christ. And Joseph Smith tells you who he is, in case you hadn't caught on by now. Section 103, talking about the redemption of Zion. Therefore, verse 16, I will raise up, there's the Deuteronomy, the law of the Jews, the Christ of the Jews. There is no other Christ. Thou shalt have no other Christ before me. Thou shalt not make any graven image of another Christ. The Ten Commandments. It's not about Jesus. Jesus is the abominable Christ that violates the Ten Commandments. So does Allah, by the way. You can't exclude them. Unto the Mormons, my people. It's all about you, Mormons. A baby of Mormon parents will give birth to a baby in the Mormon church born in the covenant of the great and abominable church. A man who shall lead them like as Moses, the Jewish Christ of the latter days. Thus why he is the symbol of Jupiter, with the signs in the heavens of Isaiah and John. And so, just so that you understand, Joseph Smith in section 43 says that only Joseph can appoint his successor. And in section 107 verse 22, he told you how to do it, and nobody did it. And so the other is to happen. That's section 103 verse 16. That's who Joseph Smith chose to succeed him. But in 91, I told you, it's not the keys of Peter to lead the church. Verse 91, section 107, and again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. And so you will know your latter-day Christ because he will have the gifts, thus the fruit, physical results of a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet. He will reveal the dates to you. He will predict the future for you. He will know Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. He will be a seer, knowing history of the past, knowing the current, and knowing the future. He sees it all. He has visions. He has dreams. He gets his authority through dreams. Numbers chapter 12, verse 6. Just like Joseph did. And the keys of Peter were given to Joseph, or keys of Moses were given to Joseph Smith on the third day of Passover, 1836, April. Kirtland Temple, section 110. He sees Jehovah. It's not Jesus. Joshua is Jesus. There is no Joshua here, but there is Elishua. Yeah, it's an error. It's Elishua, not Elias. But Moses, the keys of the Exodus, the Christ of the latter days. So Elishua is the gospel of Abraham. It's the gospel of salvation. When you go to Abraham and you see the gospel of salvation. It's Elishua. Shua is salvation. El is God. So the God of salvation came. And that's Jesus. Joshua. Yah. Shua. Yah of salvation. The God of salvation. Hebrew God, Yah. An exact picture match with Zeus in Paleo-Hebrew. And then Elijah, the God Yah. So we have the God of salvation, which is similar to Yah of salvation. And then you have the God Yah, which that could be Jesus too. And then Moses, who is Elijah and Elishua and Jehovah. They're all the same people. This is a vision. These are different keys for the one man to lead the church. It is not literal history. And And so thus John the Baptist. Nope, not literal history. He did not come and lay his hands on his head, on Joseph's head. Did not happen. Neither did Peter, James, and John. Visions. Numbers chapter 12, verse 6. Learning of the Jews. So, we're done. The other video, it's going to be part of the sealed portion, I guess. I had all these out ready to read. I may never get to these either. I had 2 more that got added to the list this morning, I saw. It's all about you, Mormons. If you endured to the end of this video, what are you going to do now? It's up to you. You have your agency. Live or die. I would tell you, like Kyle Reese told Sarah Connor, come with me if you want to live.